Right on, recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. I'd like to welcome everybody to Friday Night Big Book Study Workshop with the Program of Recovery. How we open this meeting is with a bit of outside help. What do we need for a good meeting? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, we have the worksheets for those who want to get involved. They look like this, and what they do is they take you through the book. They slow your mind down, so hopefully you can see what the basic text is trying to teach you instead of what you already know. Right? That's the hard part. How many people has relapsed here? How many people relapsed more than a couple times? Hardest people to talk to. Because I was one of those people. 11 years, you couldn't tell me nothing. Right? Like, I knew it. Like, 11 years in and out, I had a story, I had a catchphrase, I had all the slogans, I had all the sayings down, to turn it over, let it go, willingness, honesty, oh, my life's just fantastic, service work, you know, all the... Anybody coming back? Yeah, I'll take another chip. Right? So it was one of those things, because I never really had the basis of this. And there's so much... people seem to argue about basic information that's really, really critical for people like us. Really critical for people who may be suffering from alcoholism. Not everybody in the fellowship suffers from alcoholism. There's a lot of drug addicts in AA. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But they have a little different understanding of the illness than we do, right? There's a lot of people from other fellowships in AA. They understand the illness a little different than we do. When it comes to the illness of alcoholism, they're very specific on the characteristics of it. And if you don't exhibit those characteristics, you won't understand it because it makes no sense. Like the more you're trying to explain this illness to people, the way it just don't make sense. And people who haven't experienced it don't understand it. They say they don't, and so they try to make sense of it by using their own terminology or their own words or their own understanding instead of. The book talks about when you go through this and the way it's laid out, you'll understand it right away. You'll be able to match the mental inconsistencies and all this stuff. When you go back over your own drinking history, it'll make a lot of sense why we are the way we are. The only requirement from AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. This is very beneficial to anybody who applies it to their life, the spiritual principles that they found in here. And it's applicable to any problem that you have. Any problem that you have, right? The only requirement for a membership in AA is a desire to stop drinking. In the Big Book Study Workshop, anybody looking for help can come here because it's not an open meeting. I mean, it's not a closed meeting. It's an open forum meeting with a big book base. That means we kind of go through it. If you get something awesome, right? That's why we don't kind of qualify you at the door. If you get something from this and you share it with your family, your friends, it has this benefit for all people. That doesn't mean you're a member of AA. There's big qualifications to be a member of AA, right? Like it's really, there's a whole bunch of information behind the traditions, behind the worksheets, but this being a Big Book Study Workshop is put on by AA members. It's a specialty meeting, it's a service meeting. Right, put on to help people find an answer to a dilemma that they may be suffering from, but also to educate people what that illness is. Because a lot of people really don't understand the illness. They really don't know what they're up against. And so what happens is when a lot of people relapse, they get hard on themselves. Anybody get hard on themselves because they relapsed? And give themselves grief and shame and remorse? As soon as you start doing that, you've just told us that you don't understand the illness. Because what you're saying it is a behavioral problem. And you should know better. Anybody should know better here? Right? That's what it says in step 2. Right? You should know better. It doesn't say that, right? So what happens is there's a lot of misinformation in the fellowship of AA. And a lot of it's brought in by treatment centers, other organizations, other people with their own ideas who haven't done this. So our job is to educate people on what's in here and why it's laid out the way it is. So we're going to look at a couple points today, and the more you understand these points, the more you'll adhere to the rest of what's being laid out and why it's laid out the way it is, right? Because a lot of people don't really comprehend the structure of it, the design of it. And I kind of ask people, because the guys who took me through this really, like, they saved my life. It was Machine Gun Jerry, George, Rick. These guys would go through the fellowship, and people didn't like them much. But they were book-based, big book-based characters. And then when they got you into a study, they made sure you understood what was in here before you moved on to any of the points. And they took you through this course of action, enabling you to start a relationship with a power greater than yourself. And that's where your sense of dependence was your relation on something greater than you to save you from the fate that awaits you. Right? So we hear a lot of people. Anybody ever heard the term daily reprieve in here? We throw that around, but we really don't know what it means. State of execution. That's pretty heavy when you start execution. What do you mean? From the sentence that awaits us, we get a reprieve. The problem gets removed. What problem gets removed? Alcoholism. Because if you still suffer from alcoholism, what's our fate? We're going to relapse. Where do we get these ideas from? You bring that up in a meeting, a lot of people get upset about the idea that you tell them what you're agreeing to in step one is 100% guaranteed relapse. Anybody ever get upset with that? How many people like the idea when you do step one, you're okay? Right? So I used to like that idea too. So anyways, this is designed in a way to kind of get us through this. So we're going to hit some highlights here. And we're going to look at some words, and I'm not going to argue with anybody. And after the meeting, if you disagree with what the book says, you're entitled to that. You can go phone somebody else and argue with them. But I'm not arguing with nobody after the meeting. We're just going to go what the book says, and then we'll go with these points. Because we like to argue, don't we? Nobody here. You can argue within your own mind with what I'll be talking about, right? And I can tell when you guys start arguing with yourself with something we read here. You go from to. And then this is the good one.
Oh, shit.
And then it's like the head starts moving. Okay, so let's go forward to the first edition. You want to read the first part of this for us?
Sure. My name's Letitia. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Letitia.
This is the forward as it appeared in the printing of the first edition in 1939. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body.
So, right there, are they saying they all agree on what the problem is and what the solution is and what the course of action is? If they all recovered from something, does that mean they all did the same thing? Mm-hmm. So that means they would have to agree on what the problem is and the solution is. They would all have the same understanding of it, wouldn't it? Would imagine them all sitting at the table, would they be going, well, for me, well, my program, my God, mine. You ever remember that show with those little seagulls? Mine. Anyways, if you have kids, it's those Disney. Finding Nemo. That's AA recovery now. Finding Nemo. Mine. Anyway, sorry. We collectively, I have these squirrel moments. Okay, just pray for me. Okay.
To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book.
What does precisely mean?
Exactly.
Is that open to interpretation?
No.
That means by the time you get through what they're talking about, you'll understand it exactly the way they're laying it out. You'll have the same understanding, right? Yes, no, maybe. So they're going to talk about what the main purpose of this book is. What is the main purpose of this book? How they recovered, right? Anybody been trying to tell you what to do for years? Does it work really well? But if somebody shows you how to do something, it works a lot better. When you take an apprenticeship, what you do is you teach people what you learn. You don't tell them how to do it. You show them how to do it. Like when I taught my daughters how to operate saws and all, I showed them how to do it successfully. I just didn't explain it to them, turn on the saw and say, okay, run that piece through there. Oh, sorry about that finger. You got good 9 left. Let's try that again. No, it's not that kind of process, right? That means we share our experience, strength, and hope, not our opinions or ideas. There's like a big difference, right? When people ask me about something, I go, well, this is my experience with this. If I don't have experience in that area, then I really don't know. Well, we have a conversation on it, but I really don't have any experience in that area. So, to show other alcoholics precisely how they recovered from what? Seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So when we went through the doctor's opinion, he kind of touched on this stuff. He didn't want to hammer us right away with the full impact it's a leading into, right? Because if they would have hammered you right off the bat with all the information, how many people would have continued reading? By the time we got to We Agnostics, there was quite a buildup, wasn't there? How many people have been through this process? It took a lot to get you to We Agnostics. If they would have started in the doctor's opinion with that, how many people would still be here? They started you real slow, eh? Men and women like to drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, right? These allergic types. Yeah, we're a little maladjusted and full-fledged from reality, but it's okay, some of us. Anybody remember going through that? Mm-hmm. These people continue to drink over and over again, right? Because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Once this desire happens again, if he would have said insanity, once the insanity happens again, how many people would have kept reading? Mm-hmm. Oh, forget this shit. Oh, once the desire, okay, that's nice. You know, I can live with it. Once the desire comes back, okay. It's kind of soothing. It's like trying to get a kid to eat broccoli. You know, it's actually good for you. Oh, no. Right? So, but there's, we put chocolate on it. Relax. And so he talks about this is repeated over and over. What? The drinking experiment, right? Unless these people can experience an entire psychic change. You notice he didn't use spiritual experience? Because if you would have read spiritual experience there, how many people would have kept reading? Oh, no. I know. Entrapment. Anybody ever read a couple pages ahead? I'm not committing to nothing. You ever talk to your sponsor? Your sponsor's trying to ask you questions. It's like you think it's an interrogation or something. I'm actually here to work with you. No. It's entrapment. You're trying to entrap me. Anyways. So he says, unless these people experience an entire psychic change, these people with this illness, what is the likelihood of their recovery? Because they're going to keep relapsing. But on the other hand, as strange as it may seem to those that don't understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very person who seemed doomed, very little able to control his desire, very little to control it, is able to start to be able to control this thought process that precedes the first drink, which is different than the insanity, which they get into. They really get into the characteristics of alcoholism, right? And so what happens is a lot of people don't understand the difference between the obsession about the idea of drinking and the insanity of drinking. People think it's the same thing. We have that Big Book workshop online, and you would be amazed at how many people have been sober like 47 years that don't know the difference. They think the obsession and the insanity is the same thing. How many people here think it's the same thing? Now you're not going to admit to it, are you? Well, I did before you started talking. Okay, so they kind of talk about this change means a psychic change. And we don't know what that kind of means yet, but it gives two examples of people who have experienced that and recovered from the illness, who have of the hopeless variety, right? Then we got into Bill's story. And what's cool is in the doctor's opinion, they talk about there's a problem, there's a solution, and those that took a course of action. Sold on the ideas contained in this book, both of them recovered. So right off the hop, before we even got through the doctor's opinion, they've talked about the problem, solution, and course of action. Does that kind of make sense? You hear a lot of people say, oh, the first part of the book's only about step one. No, it's about educating. It's about education, educating us on what the problem is, the solution, and course of action. So Bill's story, as we went through Bill's story, it's kind of interesting how he starts talking about his progression with alcoholism. Right? As we went through his story, and we've seen what happens that once he took a drink, all kinds of mayhem happened. And then we see him trying to stop drinking. Anybody see that in his story? Mm-hmm. And how many times did he thought he had it going on because he thought it was a behavioral problem? I could laugh at the gin mills. This time I had what it takes. And then he talks about, then the thought last week started about me drinking again, and then it took me a week to pick up. He talks about suddenly something happened in his mind that he didn't see coming. Right? Was I crazy? Somebody pushed a drink my way and I took it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder. Then he says, I saw I could not take so much as one drink. What was he aware of that once he put alcohol into his system? The allergy. He says he couldn't stop, so he became aware of this idea that once he starts, he can't stop. So the solution is don't start. Stop from starting, right? If I don't, so he renewed his resolve and tried again. And how well did he do? Even when he met with the doctor that explained step 1 to him, what did he thought was the answer after the explanation of our problems?
Self-knowledge.
Self-knowledge. How many people are there? I'll just keep on guard, watch what I'm doing. Oh, the reason I realized is because I stopped going to meetings. You ever hear people say that? That's not the reason you relapsed. Well, I've been just going to meetings and I relapsed. Oh, the wrong meetings. How many people have been going to meetings and relapsed? Well, I guess it's not the meetings. So we don't understand the illness. When people say that, right, the reason I realized is because I stopped going to meetings, they don't understand the illness. This is part of the scenario, but that's not what keeps you sober. It's like the idea, just because I'm in a meeting, I'm exempt from relapsing. Anybody ever give you that idea? It's like alcohol, like AA is an alcohol-free zone. Now that I'm in AA, I don't have to worry about relapsing. How many people are under that impression? Again, you don't understand alcoholism. So Bill met with the doctor. And what did he think after that? Page 7. He talks about this thing. It relieved me. We like to be relieved of the impending doom that we think we suffer from, right? We like to be comforted, don't we? We even like to be lied to. How many people, when you were new here, came here that people told you you'd be okay? That was the first lie. It's like going to emergency. Oh, glad you're here. Sit down. You need to let somebody know you're there. You ever hear people dying in emergency? Sitting in emergency, did you let somebody know you were there? I guess you can't ask. We didn't even know he was here. Just because you're in emergency. Anybody been to an airport without a ticket? Who's the only one not going somewhere? Just because you go to the airport doesn't mean you're going somewhere, does it? Just because you come to AA doesn't mean you're going somewhere by sitting here. Right? So in Bill's story here, it relieved me, page 7.
It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Yeah, it means you can't stop yourself from starting, but now that you know that, just watch out for it. When you kind of see what he's saying here, because the doctor says you need to experience a psychic change or spiritual experience, well, psychic change. You need to have some form of change in order for you not to drink anymore. Otherwise, you're going to continue to drink. That's step 1, right? So the doctor's explaining to him his condition, that, hey, this is step 1. You're going to continue to relapse unless you have this psychic change that you can't bring about by yourself, and going to meetings won't be enough, or doing your support groups won't be enough if you're of this type. You need something a little more deep in order to create the change within inside of yourself to save you from the problem that you suffer from, alcoholism. And he's saying, thanks for the information. And that would translate to just don't pick up. Yeah, how many people have you heard say that? Just don't pick up. That's what he's saying here. Well, if I just don't pick up, I'll be okay. And I'll be able to see me coming to that stage of not picking up. How many people are coming back? You forgot to see? So remember, we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. What's the most important statement in there? Remember, you're dealing with something you can't remember. Remember? Because if you can remember, step 2 would just say, just don't do it no more. Anybody ever have problems here that cause the... I've eaten... when I got diagnosed with being allergic to pistachios, you know what? I've never eaten them since. I've thought about it once or twice, but I've never acted on it. My wife even cooks
me once or twice to try it. That was after signing the papers, but I don't know what that's about. We'll keep reading.
Oh, man.
And they're there. I know exactly where they are. They're sitting in the pantry, the bag of half-eaten pistachios.
Mocking you.
Waiting for me, waiting, calling me. No, it's not that kind of... You look at it and you just see the danger, and it's like, no, my experience with it is enough. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, same thing. If you kept on eating them, there would be a serious problem. How many people's had problem with alcohol here? Oh, just checking. How many have had problems long before you thought you had a problem with it? How many people around you knew you had a problem with it? How many people tried to suggest to you that maybe you have a problem with it? How many people thought they were the ones for even suggesting it that they had a problem? How many people found more understanding people? We always got to find understanding people. You don't question me, I don't question you. Or you got to find people who are worse than you. They're always best. Oh my God, if I ever get that bad. Then you're the one they're pointing at. Sorry. I don't know how the tables turned on this.
Cycle.
Okay.
Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high.
What does that mean, the goose hung high?
Stayed sober.
Well, what it means is back in the day, they used to take their prize goose, right? And put it in the butcher shop, and they'd hang it as the highest thing. And that would be whoever was able to buy that, right? It was like, remember that show, Christmas or whatever, what's that show? Huh? Christmas Carol. And he tells the kid, go buy the biggest, right? The goose in the window that everybody was able to see. The goose hung high, the prize possession, right? The goose hung high. Things are good. Look, things. How many people have been there? Let me tell you how impressed I am with me. You talk about how sober you are, how great you're doing, how fantastic everything is, right? Me. And shit, I'm even taking 24 hours now and passing the stuff out. I don't know where that came from. I'll take 24 for me, and if you're having struggle, here's 24 for you. You don't need to do the steps today. Just hang around with me tomorrow. That statement has all the humility in the world in it, doesn't it? I'll take 24, and sorry about your people's luck, but I'm handing the stuff out right now. I'm a sobriety pusher. No, sorry, go ahead.
I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge.
How many people have been there feeling good about your sobriety? Feeling really good. But what is he doing for his sobriety? Nothing. He's just feeling good about it. Right? So, I asked the question earlier to some, we're sitting in a little group, is what's the recipe that they give us to check that we're on track and we're staying on track? There's a recipe to know that we're on track and staying on track. And this is the first thing that goes, and then shortly afterwards, sooner or later, our sobriety goes. Just think about it. Don't answer it now, but there's a recipe in this thing that lets us know that we're on track and stay on track, right? So this guy's doing nothing for his sobriety, and he's feeling great about it. So that means, like, what it looked like today is, yes, I have a home group, but I don't go to my business meetings. Yes, there's service positions, but I'm not involved in any of it. I don't do phone shifts. I don't do GSR. I don't do nothing. I don't show up at my meeting half an hour before. I don't show up afterwards. I don't look for newcomers. I don't do nothing. I go there just in time to sit, speak, and leave. Wouldn't that be the same thing Bill's doing? Telling everybody how great he's doing? Let's see how well that works for him. Because he's feeling good, right?
Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump.
So what that says is he doesn't really understand alcoholism because of his approach to it. It's like people who said, yeah, I'm working on the steps. Well, where are you on the steps? Well, I'm on this step. How long you been on that step for? 3 months. You don't understand alcoholism. If you're that long on a step, then you don't understand what you're up against. You're deceiving yourself in what the problem is. Either you don't believe you suffer from this problem, or you're exempt from this problem, or that self-reliance will keep you from this problem. It's one of those areas. Because if you have this problem, we already know what we agreed to. Right? Has Bill done that here? No, he's under the impression that his experience and knowledge will keep him sober based on his desire, and how well is he doing? And how well have we done? Right? Because if the stuff of yesterday was enough to keep you sober, wouldn't you still be sober? Yeah. My sponsor said that. So let me get this right. You're coming back and doing more of what you're doing before you relapsed. Yeah. And you're doing more of it. Yeah. It didn't work the last time. It will work for 3 months, and you're feeling successful about that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we go through this. He ends up in hospital, and then he ends up in hospital again. The third time he ends up in hospital, his friend takes him through a course of action. I want to get into some things here. He put the course of action. The problem got removed. And then in Bill's story, he talks about here, as we go into page 15, the doctor confirms that there's this change. That he's undergone a profound alteration in life. He's now in counsel with something greater than himself, right? He's had this spiritual experience or psychic change. How many people are here right now? So he's had this. The insanity has been removed. Alcoholism is removed from his life. But when you read page 15, there's something else going there, right? He talks about here, he talked about, I was plagued. Listen, my wife and I abandoned. Let's go to page 15.
Second paragraph down on page 15. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. It was fortunate.
Which is one of the first major characteristic shifts in the confirmation of this change happening in your life, is the overwhelming desire to start helping other people. That means if you've been pulled from the water and you were dying of hypothermia and you got in the boat and they kind of resuscitated you back to health and you got the color back and you stopped shaking. And I don't know if anybody has exposure or hypothermia here, but it's quite you can actually die from it, right? So they brought the body temperature back, get them some food, and then you're back on the main ship and you get to go back into the TV room, or you hear the people who are still in the water. The Grayville people will get on a life jacket and go help those who are still in the water. Those who are happy with what they got will go sit and watch TV. Two different experiences altogether. Isn't it? So this guy here, he still hear people in the water. He says, you know what? Well, it's freely given it. What I'm experiencing here, other people might benefit from this thing. This is wild, man, because what I'm experiencing here is pretty phenomenal. And he's just leaving treatment. Yeah, most people leaving treatment are still working on themselves. Sorry. Yes, the problem. Okay.
It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for 1.5 years, during which I found little work.
Makes sense, right? We get a little upset with people when after 3 months they're starting to look at us still a little weird. 1.5 years is business, and the people placing we're all still a little skeptical about his sobriety. Why shouldn't it be? The guy couldn't get sober for 5 years. Every time they built the trust up on him, what did he do? Tore the structure down. So after a while, if you've been in and out for a while, most people just smile at your idea of you getting sober. Well, they hope the best for you, but they're kind of resigned to the fact that maybe not, right? So 1.5 years, okay?
I was not too well at the time and was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day.
So, would soon... Read that again. Would what?
This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day.
So is he thinking about drinking? Listen to the question. Listen to his statement. Is he thinking about drinking? We'll read it again. Go ahead.
It was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for 1.5 years, during which I found little work.
So he's having problems with people around him still, right?
I was not too well at the time and was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment.
He's still can't get over himself, right? He's still stuck in the darkness that he still possesses. His 6 and 7 is still, right, haunting him. He's still plagued with this stuff. Plagued. That's a heavy statement, right? So, but he has a recipe for it now. Or he didn't have a recipe before for it, right? So he's applying these spiritual, and he's getting some relief. The relief of the insanity of the first drink not returning. But the idea of drinking is still coming back to him. The obsession or idea comes back of, man, it'd be nice to have a drink. How many people's had that idea here? Every one of your hands should go up. Unless you're lying. I like these people. I've never thought about it again. Fuck, really? I'm 30 years sober. I just thought about it on the way here. No, but the whole idea is, see, when these thoughts come, it's not the insanity. It's the subconscious saying, hey, you know what? I know what will make you feel better. But he's able to curb that by helping other people. He's able to get past the idea. Later on in more about alcoholism, it says we smash the truth. We smash the obsession based on truth, the idea. In step 10, it talks about by this time sanity will have returned when tempted. If you're tempted about something, are you thinking about it? When tempted, you recoil from it. The reason you're able to do those things is based on your spiritual conditioning. If you weren't spiritually well, what would you do in those situations? Drink. That's why it's a daily reprieve, right? And what keeps you connected is, remember that question I asked? What's the recipe that makes sure we're on track and staying on track? We're going to get to that shortly. I'm going to remind you what that question is. So Bill has a recipe that he puts into practice that he doesn't continue to deteriorate where the insanity returns. Right? Because he has a recipe. So as we go through, there is a solution. We go right over to the idea. And through here, they talk about the problem, the solution, and the fellowship. Right? On page 23 is the first introduction to what the real problem is. They talk about on page 22, if we never took a drink, we'd never trigger the physical allergy. So that means we're going to switch to the second symptom in alcoholism. There's only 2 symptoms in alcohol, the body and the mind. So now they're saying we're going to switch to a new topic and we're going to build on these ideas, but we're going to give you the basic of the conversation. When they started with the allergy, they said in the body, right? What consists of the problem in the body is the allergy. And then they said these allergic types. They started to expand on the allergy, but first they told you where the problem was located, didn't they? Was in the body. So that's the physical part. Seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. They've covered the body. And we understand we never picked up the first drink, we never trigger the allergy, setting forth the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, all the consequences that come as a result of me not being able to control and enjoy my alcohol. Because I'm being driven by the allergy, which there will always be consequences, because that's what gets us here. It's not our drinking that gets us here, it's the consequences. Because if you could still drink without consequence, how many people would be sitting here Friday night?
Nobody.
So as the consequences that found out what you have is this illness of alcohol. So here they talk about this. Let's go with page 22. We know
that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men.
See, months or years, that's the tricky part about our illness. We think we could be doing really well. And then you go, what makes you say that? And it'd be like Bill, well, the goose hung high. Things are really good. I'm going to meetings. I'm not involved in meetings. I'm going to meetings. Big difference. I'm going to roundups. I'm dating. Things are fine. Life's fantastic. I got a job. I got money. I got this. I got that. Right? Well, how about the recipe? What recipe? You don't have the recipe, eh? Yeah, I have the recipe. Well, tell me the recipe. I don't know what the recipe is. Then we'd go to bumper stick sobriety. We'd go to catchphrase sobriety, which we all kind of understand. But what's the recipe that keeps us here? There's a recipe that keeps us here for longevity. It's the first thing that goes before sobriety. Yes, humility and all this other stuff, but there's something that keeps us in check to keep the humility present. It's something that we have to engage in, becomes a working part of the mind, because if it don't, we don't stay here because we have an illness. And this is what they're getting at here.
We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this.
Can we get a true or false on that?
These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink.
True or false? If I was able not to take the first drink, would you need him to come to AA?
No.
So you see, you came here because you could not take the first drink. And so you also find out that AA is designed for relapsers. It's not designed for people who can stay sober. So if you're relapsing, welcome to AA. That means you haven't found a solution sufficient enough to create this change that we need. That means you need to look at the recipe that you're incorporating that isn't working. You need to shift something in what you're doing to bring about this change. Does that kind of make sense? And then when you get the recipe, you maintain that recipe and develop it. And that leads to longevity, because without the recipe, we can stay sober for months or years. How many people like to stay sober for months or years at a time and then relapse again? You like that? No. Okay, that's... Well, it seems pretty good. You get a good bank account built up, and then everybody's relaxed, and then you start stealing jewelry again. Like, it's great. No, sorry. Okay, so squirrel, I'm back.
All right. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body.
So where does the main problem of the alcoholic center? Do we know what that characteristic is yet?
No.
They say this is where, like when they said the body, they haven't explained what they mean by that yet, right? They're going to now expand. They've switched the whole conversation to the mind. They said as long as we never took a drink, we never have to worry about the allergy. So let's start a new conversation. So as they start going through in here, they get to, because I want to get through some ideas here. Once in a while, he may tell the truth, right? And they talk about, well, we might as well go from there because it builds on this idea. They're talking about the what? The problem that centers where? In the mind.
Once in a while, he may tell the truth, and the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea why he took the first drink than you have.
So if you don't know why you took the drink, that means you're not thinking about it, are you? Why did you do that? I don't know. I don't know why I did it. I just did it. Anybody have that just did it problem?
Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time.
Anybody have excuses why they do it?
But in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot.
Once this malady, what malady? Yeah, illness, this condition of the mind. It exhibits itself in so many different ways, but the main characteristic is they keep drinking. That's why they're bad. They keep on drinking. That's why they call it a malady. They're not very specific on one word because it's really an unexplainable event that happens in people like us who have this illness. It's really hard to pinpoint what exactly that thing is, right?
There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game.
So there's the first time they mention the word obsession in our basic text here. Beat the game in what way?
Be their own solution.
Okay, control and enjoy your drink. A lot of people, because you got that idea ahead. But if you've never read ahead in the book, and you were here in the book, right? Without connecting the other dots, just being right here, what would they be referring to? They're saying, I already agreed that if I never took a drink, I never trigger the allergy. So I don't want to drink again. Right? I don't want to drink again, but I keep drinking again. That's why I'm baffled. Right? So they talk about there's the obsession that somehow, someday, they'll beat the game. What game? What am I trying to do? I'm trying not to relapse. I'm trying to be my own solution. I'm trying not to drink under any and all conditions. Why am I baffled? I keep drinking. Now this week, here's the exercise. When you go to meetings and you hear a person sharing who's coming back, listen to everything they're doing to fix themselves. How many people, when they came back, had a list of things they were telling everybody they were going to do different this time? There's the obsession. Who are they obsessed with being the solution here? Themselves. They're obsessed with themselves fixing this problem. Whoa, that's a little different when you look at it that way. We don't like the idea of the focus being on us as the problem, do we? We like the idea of the problem being the alcohol. Just don't do it, you're okay, no problems. What do you mean I'm the problem? How many people like the idea that they're the problem? So here, okay.
But they often suspect they are down for the count. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their family and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal, but everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will.
To do what?
To drink.
To stay sober. Just don't do it. Just don't pick up. Is that not how many people try to exert their will to stay sober here in the past? Really? How many people comfort themselves with the idea that they're able to stay sober before, but unable to do it now? That's the mind that plays trick because you don't really understand what you're up against. So it makes sense that I'd be everybody around us. Is anybody have a cheering committee here? Come on, how many people got family, friends, the cheering committee? You can do it. You're great. You come in AA and you get your own cheering committee going. Yay! Pom-poms and everything. Yay! You get your chip. Everybody, oh, you're doing such a great job. And now you're giving the illusion that they're actually keeping themselves sober based on what they're doing. What are you doing? I'm just going to meetings, not picking up, asking for help in the morning, giving thanks at night, and sharing with whoever will listen to me. Remember, I'm 11 years in and out. I'm talking about my story here, right? That's what we do. I'm really emptying the room today. I don't know what it is. So, I'm
You're
just
something
joking.
right.
Okay, it's like some of the 15 people. I thought I was losing my touch. It's okay. 15 people left, 10 people with their arms crossed. Okay, let's go.
The tragic truth is that if a man be a real alcoholic, that happy day may not arrive.
So they use the terminology real alcoholic here. So what are they associating the real alcoholic with? Person has this condition, the malady. Not everybody has this condition. Now they're going to expand on what they mean by the malady and this condition, right? Because most of us don't understand this condition in association with what makes a person powerless over alcohol. So they're going to...
Because people don't start these drugs, because people don't. Because I mean, like way back in the day when my kids were little and I was, deciding to stop drinking, yay, that's what they told me. My old kid said to me, just don't pick up, not pick up, but just don't drink on me.
Yeah.
That was the solution. So
And that's why this book was put together, is to inform and comfort those who may be afflicted or have people who are afflicted with alcoholism, so we could be better educated on what they're dealing with. Right? That's the whole point of this thing, right? So then when we kind of go through to the next page, they go to explain that a bit more, what they mean by that, right? At a certain point.
At top of page 24. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected.
So what we're saying here, we're going to show you what the symptoms of alcoholism and look back. They said absolutely no avail. That means it could be a year, 2 years. I keep finding myself drinking again. We think it means consistently. No, they're saying we're able to stay sober for periods of time based on our own story. How many people here have been able to stay sober at different times in their life and then found themselves drinking again? That's what they're talking about. If absolutely no, we forget the goose hung high. We really don't know what we're dealing with. We get comforted in the fact that we're sober today, right? But that's not what keeps us sober if you're of this type. Tick-tock, tick-tock. There's something at work here. In step 10, it talks about the problem being removed. It talks about we have a daily reprieve, which we started the meeting on. Daily reprieve on what? Contingent on what? Our spiritual condition. How and where do I learn the recipe to develop and maintain and keep this so I don't suffer the weight of alcoholism anymore? Where's that recipe? Okay, we'll get back to that. The fact.
The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink.
For reasons yet obscure, they really don't understand it, do they? Malady, really a wide stroke of something seriously wrong here that centers in their mind. They talk, which really obscure is really, we really don't understand how this happens in these type of people. It really doesn't make sense that you just left the hospital, you just had a car wreck, your relationship, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket, and you're having another drink. You just took a 2-year cake, you just took a 15-year cake, and you're drinking again? Why is that? Illness, not a behavioral problem. Daily reprieve, contingent on maintaining and developing the recipe. What recipe keeps us here? I'll get back to it.
Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink.
How's that an introduction to what the malady is? Whoa. If you're alcoholic, you probably skipped right over that. It's like what kids do. La, 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 la. Well, I'm not reading that. I'm going to skip. That's why we do the worksheets, because we skip over the important parts. When you kind of read that, you kind of go, uh-oh, I'm in deep shit. That's what that says. Uh-oh. But we don't know uh-oh. Okay, so they talk about when this thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies at the bottom, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. So this is the first time that determines whether you're outside of human aid or not. It's a good question. You hear people say, there's a lot of people who are not outside that scope in AA, beyond human aid. They're able to stay sober with the support of AA, support groups, outside help, and all the stuff all that. They're able to stay sober without doing this process. They are, right? So then there's a group that's beyond human aid. How would you know whether you're beyond human aid or not? Keep relapsing. And if you keep relapsing, you're beyond human aid. Mm-hmm. The admittance of that is another thing. In order to admit it, you need to kind of understand it. When you understand it, it'll motivate you into finding help. If you've tried to stay sober on your own even before coming to AA, and you find yourself relapsing, you hear people say, I've never relapsed, then you would never come to AA. You're unable to stay sober. That's why you're here. AA is designed for people who can't get sober on their own. You ever notice that? If you're able to get sober on your own, how many people would come here just to check in with us and let us know how well you're doing? Yeah, right. I gotta just come by and let you guys know how well I'm doing at home. We don't get those type of people showing up. I had one person that I've met in the last 30 years that got dropped off to AA. Her family. She's never tried to get sober. She didn't want to get sober. Her family had enough. Dropped her off before the meeting. Said, we'll pick you up after the meeting. They did that every day. Fall out of the car. Just drop her off. You guys take her. and then, she come to me and listen. She got on, she just took a 2-year cake. Pretty wild. So there's one person I knew that never tried to get stopped before. Most of us try to stop, but okay. So here, beyond human aid. So that's one of them. So then they get into here. They talk about here, and we're going to get into more about alcoholism. More about alcoholism is about what? More about alcoholism. So in order to talk more about something, you'd have to understand what they're talking about in the first place, wouldn't you? So what are the two things that they're going to talk about?
Mind and body.
The mind and body, right? That's the two symptoms of alcoholism. There's no other symptoms. They're the two symptoms. So they talk about, the first problem is, when they mention the word obsession here for the second time, it's in regards to a different conversation, right? And the obsession refers to people who haven't done step 1 yet. You haven't done step one yet. If you're still thinking you can control and enjoy your drinking, have you done step one? If you're thinking there's a way you can get away with it, have you done step one? If you're thinking about alcohol and it kind of scares you a bit and you phone your sponsor, you get involved in a meeting, you go help somebody, have you done step one? Yeah. See the difference? And here's where they start that. We're going to read the first paragraph.
Most of us have been unwilling to admit that we were real alcoholics.
Meaning having that malady, real alcoholics. Not that I have the allergy, real alcoholics, beyond human aid. Most of us have been unwilling to admit it. So we don't see you dancing to the tune of, oh yes, I have this. It takes a lot to really get this idea home. It really takes a really good beating in alcoholism to really say, okay, I'm trying to get a foot. I think I have this problem. We know, but I'm glad you admitted it. Okay.
No person likes to think that he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows.
True.
Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people.
How many people tried that here? Countless vain attempts before you knew what the problem was, before you knew what alcoholism was. How many people tried what they talk about on the next page? Drinking beer only, doing this, don't mixing methamphetamine with acid, don't drink acid, or tequila, don't eat the worm, it's the worm that gets you. How many people do that? The reason was because you drank the white wine with the red wine and then you drank the rum and that's what made you sick. It's the grenadine. Don't drink drinks with grenadine in it. It's those people you drink with. You just got to drink water in between each drink. Just keep yourself paced with those other people. Just. Anybody ever try that? And then about 4 drinks and just forget it. How many people have tried everything? There's got to be a way I could drink without consequence. And if you're in a blackout, it doesn't count, right? It still counts. Okay, sorry. So this person hasn't sought it. A lot of people with alcoholism won't seek help. There's a lot of people out there, just the mere fact that you're here, it's amazing with this illness. When you look at the percentage of people who suffer from alcoholism in the world and the percentage of people that seek help, what made you seek help was the consequences. Life became unsatisfactory, right? You just couldn't continue on the way you were going. There's a lot of people out there who continue in that cycle day in and day out. They don't see a problem with what they're doing. They go to work, they drink, they carry on. Life's good. They may die a few years before their time, but they don't really seek help. The reason we seek help is because alcoholism got out of control. How many people would have sought help if you were able to sit in that bar and continue to drink or what you're doing without consequence? It's the consequences and the people giving you that stink eye, right? How many people know the stink eye? Mm-hmm. How many people, when you wake up in the morning, you hear the people still there? Oh. How many people wake up in the morning and have that embarrassment because you remember what you did the night before? Anybody ever have that here? Anybody ever wake up and tap the person beside you to see who they were? No, sorry. Sorry, maybe it's just me. Okay, go ahead.
The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker.
So this is the second time that we used the word obsession in the book, and they won't use it again in the basic text. They use it in regards to what?
Drinking like other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to control and enjoy our drinking. Read that again. It's really good.
The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker.
How many people's had that here? There's got to be a way. How many people like the idea of quitting? I got the right group. How many people said they're good A because all their other cards, there were no other cards to play? How am I gonna? We're fast thinkers. Any fast thinkers here? It's got to be a way I get at it. Depending on their look, okay, I'll go to AA. Oh my God, what did I just go and do there? Okay, so we see the obsession. This person, have they done step 1 yet? And whether they need to or not is yet to be determined, because they might not end up in AA. So here, for those that end up in AA, most of us come here, you hear people say all the time, is that they come here to find a way to control and enjoy their drinking, or to drink without consequence, or to get people off their back. Most people don't really want to quit when they get here. Get that? Come on, let's be honest. How many people, before they come in, oh no, I can't drink the way I'm drinking anymore, or I don't want to drink, but the idea of never drinking again, that's why we suppose, no, we just do it here one day at a time. Because never again, how many people would have had an anxiety attack? What do you mean never again? Oh my God, what an order. I can't go through with it. We know. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death.
So, do these people know what they're suffering from? Do they know what they're suffering from? Remember, Bill, I saw I could not take so much as one drink. Did it stop him from drinking? Right? And then he met a doctor who told him what his problem was. But these people here are still pursuing that. There's something wrong, but they're not too sure what it is. But there's got to be a way they could manage it. Right? And then through consequences, a lot of us end up in AA. Right? And here, we start finding out why we couldn't control and enjoy it. We find out that we can never safely drink again. And that's what the next paragraph is about.
We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics.
Meaning what? Concede to our innermost self that we're alcoholic, that I can't safely drink under any and all conditions. Why? Because of the allergy. And also, I can't keep myself sober under any and all conditions because of the malady. So a lot of people think when they say here, oh, I can see I've done step 1. This is the first step in recovery. That should keep me sober. It says, no, you just suffer from it. It doesn't keep you sober. And when you smash the idea that I can no safely longer drink, will I be suffering from the obsession? If the idea comes up, the obsession here is the idea that I can control and enjoy my drinking. If I've done step 1, am I still under that illusion? So when the thought comes up with the idea of drinking, how many people here has had the idea of drinking and it scared you? And you phoned somebody, you got to a meeting, you got involved right away because you don't want to drink because of the consequence. You smashed the idea based on truth, right? That's able to keep you sober for that period of time. But there's another problem, is the malady. Human aid can fix the problem of the obsession, but it can't fix the problem of the malady. And so a lot of people get the two mixed up, right? You're going to have thoughts about it. You're going to have if you're spiritually grounded, you will go past that. But if you're not spiritually grounded, it's just a matter of time before the obsession turns into insanity. Does that kind of make sense? So this week, the recipe that they talk about for longevity, anybody know what that is other than the people I talked about? What's the recipe for longevity that the people who have able to stay sober under any and all conditions, they have a recipe that they've incorporated in their life that is the first thing that gives them indication that they're in trouble. Anybody know what that is? Step 11. When we go to bed at night, upon awakening, all through the day, there's a recipe, a check-in recipe where my connection with Source, with life, power, my consciousness. It lets me know when I'm becoming instinct-based or still spiritually based. It's the connection that keeps me developing. This whole thing is about getting to step 11 and living there. Step 11 is the only step that talks about development. There's a lot of but we're going to continue on about it next week. So we'll close with today's Friday, right? Yeah. We'll close with the Serenity Prayer. We got the worksheets up here for those who want to get involved. So way in the back, what's the key ingredient to long-term sobriety? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I think it's a full moon this week or
Hey,
something.
thanks, Tony. I'm out of here.